businessman left safe full of gold open to test the cleaner. Her reaction shocked him. Rebecca Johnson never imagined that Monday morning would change her life forever. For 3 months, she had worked as a cleaner at the construction company Smith & Partners in downtown Chicago, always arriving promptly at 6 in the morning to start cleaning before the other employees. That morning, as she entered the office of CEO Richard Smith for her daily cleaning, she froze. The gray steel safe behind the desk was wide open, and the golden gleam of the stacked gold bars inside made her heart race. "Oh my Lord," she whispered, glancing around to make sure she was alone. Her hands trembled as she clutched the cleaning rag. She had never seen so much gold in her entire life. There were at least 15 gleaming bars, each likely worth more than she would earn in years of work. On the other side of the building, in the security office, Richard Smith watched everything through the cameras. His brown eyes were fixed on the screen, analyzing Rebecca's every move. At 42, he had built an empire in the construction industry, but in recent months, he'd heard unkind remarks from some employees about the new cleaner. "She's too quiet, boss," Mike, the cleaning supervisor, had said the week before. "These humble folks sometimes can't resist temptation when they see an opportunity." "You should be careful, Richard," warned Jennifer, his personal assistant. "She has access to all the offices, and with the struggles she's been facing at home." Richard knew about Rebecca's situation from HR records. A single mother, raising an 8-year-old daughter alone, living in a housing project on the south side. Her cleaner's salary barely covered basic expenses, and he'd noticed she always brought lunch from home and never bought anything from the company cafe. On the screen, Rebecca remained still in front of the open safe. Richard turned up the volume, trying to catch any sound, but she stayed silent, just staring. Rebecca closed her eyes for a moment, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She thought of her daughter, Emily, who had fallen ill the previous week with a high fever. The private doctor's visit had cost $200, nearly a third of her monthly paycheck. The doctor had ordered tests, but she still didn't have the money for them. "One of these bars would solve all my problems," she murmured under her breath, but immediately scolded herself. "Stop it, Rebecca, you're no thief." With shaking hands, she stepped closer to the safe. The sound of her footsteps on the marble floor echoed in the silent office. For a moment, her hand hovered over one of the gold bars, but she didn't touch it. Richard leaned toward the monitor. This was the crucial moment of his test. He had left the safe open on purpose, without telling anyone, not even the night guard. He wanted to see Rebecca's true reaction when faced with a temptation that could change her life. Rebecca took a deep breath and firmly shut the safe door. The sound of the mechanism echoed through the office like thunder. She spun the combination until she heard the lock click and then continued cleaning as if nothing had happened. "Unbelievable," Richard murmured, surprised by her response. For the next 2 hours, Rebecca cleaned the office with her usual efficiency. She dusted the mahogany desk, organized the scattered papers, wiped the windows overlooking downtown, and vacuumed the imported Persian rug. Not once did she glance back at the safe. When she finished, she packed up her cleaning supplies into the cart and moved on to the next office. Richard continued watching through the cameras. She worked all morning maintaining the same routine, showing no change in behavior. At 9 o'clock, when the first employees began arriving, Richard left the security office and headed toward the room where Rebecca was cleaning. "Good morning, Rebecca," he greeted, leaning against the door. She turned quickly, clearly startled to see him there. "Good morning, Mr. Smith," she replied, lowering her head respectfully. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. I was just finishing up here." "No, not at all. Actually, I wanted to talk to you." Rebecca's heart raced. Had he discovered something? Maybe there were cameras in his office she didn't know about. "Did something happen, sir? Were you in my office this morning?" The direct question made Rebecca swallow hard. She had never lied to an employer before, but she had also never been in a situation like this. "Yes, sir. I clean there every morning as you instructed." "And did you notice anything unusual? Anything out of place?" Rebecca hesitated for a moment. If she said she hadn't noticed anything, she'd be lying. But if she mentioned the safe, he might think she had tried to tamper with it. "The safe was open, sir," she finally said, deciding on the truth. "I closed it and continued cleaning as usual." Richard studied her face carefully. There was honesty in her dark eyes, but also understandable nervousness. "And you didn't touch anything?" "No, sir. I'm not a thief," Rebecca replied firmly, lifting her chin for the first time. "My mother raised me to be honest, no matter what hardships life brings." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Rebecca's response surprised Richard. There was a dignity in her he hadn't expected. Throughout his career, he'd met many people who were honest, only when there was no opportunity to be dishonest. "I'm sorry if I sounded accusatory," he said, softening his tone. "It's just that lately, I've been very concerned about the company's security." "I understand, sir. You're right to be concerned. There are plenty of dishonest people out there." Richard nodded, but kept watching Rebecca. There was something about her that intrigued him. Most people, upon finding an open safe with so much gold, would at least be curious. They'd ask about it or comment on the situation. She had simply closed the safe and kept working as if it were part of her normal routine. "Rebecca, do you have family?" The personal question caught her off guard. "I have a daughter, sir. Emily. She's 8. "And her father?" "He's not around, sir. I raise her alone." Richard nodded understandingly. He himself had grown up in a struggling family. His mother, Margaret, had worked her whole life as a cleaner to support him and his 2 brothers after their father abandoned them when Richard was just 10. "That must be hard." "We manage," Rebecca replied, not wanting to sound like she was asking for pity. Just then, Jennifer, the secretary, appeared in the hallway looking for Richard. "Sorry to interrupt, but you have a meeting in 15 minutes, she informed him, casting a suspicious glance at Rebecca. "I'll be right there," Richard answered. "Rebecca, thank you for the talk. Keep up the good work." As he walked away, Jennifer lingered for a few seconds, watching Rebecca gather her cleaning supplies. "You're new here, aren't you?" Jennifer asked in an unfriendly tone. "Yes, Ma'am. I've been here 3 months." "You'd better be careful. Mr. Smith doesn't like employees who take advantage of his trust." Rebecca didn't quite understand what Jennifer was trying to say, but she chose not to ask. "Yes, Ma'am. I'm sure I won't disappoint anyone." Jennifer gave a forced smile and walked away, leaving Rebecca alone in the hallway. She finished putting away the supplies and went on with her tasks, but the conversation with her boss kept echoing in her mind for the rest of the day. That night, in the small apartment on the south side, Rebecca made dinner while Emily did her homework at the kitchen table. The girl was thin and had the same expressive eyes as her mother, but lately she had been paler than usual. "Mom, my head hurts again," Emily complained, dropping her pencil. Rebecca walked over and touched her daughter's forehead. It was hot. "You have a fever, sweetheart. I'll give you some medicine." "I don't want to get sick, Mom. We don't have money for a doctor." Her daughter's words broke Rebecca's heart. Emily, despite her young age, already understood the family's financial situation perfectly. "Don't worry about that, honey. Your health is more important than any money." But as she said it, Rebecca was doing the math in her head. If Emily got worse, she'd have to take her to the doctor again. And what if expensive medicine was needed? She was already behind on 2 credit card payments from the last visit. In the early hours of the morning, Emily woke up with a high fever and vomiting. Rebecca didn't hesitate. She picked up her daughter and called a taxi to take them to the nearest public emergency room. At the hospital, the wait was long. Emily dozed in her mother's arms while dozens of other people waited to be seen. It was almost 5 in the morning when they were finally called. "The girl needs some urgent tests," the on-duty doctor said after examining Emily. "It could be a serious infection." "Doctor, how much do those tests cost?" "If it's through Medicaid, it'll take weeks to get them done. Privately, it's about $800. Rebecca felt the world spin. $800 was almost her entire monthly salary. "What if we don't do the tests?" "I wouldn't recommend waiting, ma'am. Given her condition, it could be dangerous." Rebecca looked at her daughter, pale and weak in her arms. There was no choice. "I'll get the money, doctor. When can we schedule it?" The lab opens at 7. If you bring the money by then, we can do it today." On the taxi ride home with Emily asleep in her arms, Rebecca obsessively searched for a solution. She had no relatives who could lend her money. She had already maxed out her credit card. She owned nothing valuable enough to sell or pawn. Then the image of the gold bars in the open safe returned to her mind. Just one of those bars would solve not only Emily's medical tests, but all the family's financial problems for years. "My God, why do you put temptation in our lives?" she murmured, staring out the taxi window as the city woke up. When they got home, she put Emily to bed and called Mike, the cleaning supervisor, to let him know she'd be a little late because of her daughter's illness. "Don't worry, Rebecca," Mike said. "The important thing is taking care of your girl, but don't be too late, or people will start talking." At 7:30 in the morning, Rebecca arrived at work with swollen eyes from crying. She had spent 2 hours trying to figure out how to get the $800, but couldn't think of any viable solution. When she entered Richard's office to do the morning cleaning, she stopped in front of the safe. This time, it was securely closed. She stood there for a few minutes, remembering the golden gleam of the bars from the morning before. "If I took just one," she thought, "no one would even notice. There are so many in there." But she immediately shook her head, pushing the thought away. "You're not a thief, Rebecca Johnson. Your mother didn't raise you to be one." She began cleaning with mechanical movements, trying to push the image of sick Emily from her mind. That's when she noticed a small golden key on the floor, near the safe. It must have fallen when the boss closed the safe the night before. Rebecca picked up the key and examined it. It was delicate and obviously expensive, probably a spare key to the safe. If she wanted, she could keep it and come back in the middle of the night. No one would know. Her heart raced again. Fate was placing the solution right in front of her. It felt like a sign, a once-in-a-lifetime chance to save her daughter. She slipped the key into her uniform pocket and finished cleaning quickly. For the rest of the day, the small key felt like it weighed pounds in her pocket. Every time she brushed her hand against it, she felt a mix of hope and guilt. That afternoon, Richard called all the employees to a meeting in the company auditorium. Rebecca, who normally didn't attend administrative meetings, was asked to stay. "Everyone, I'd like to talk about something very important," Richard began, pacing back and forth at the front of the room. "Honesty and trust," Rebecca shivered. Had he found out about the key? "Yesterday I ran a little test on all of you," Richard continued. "I deliberately left my office safe open all night and morning to see how each of you would react." A murmur spread through the room. Everyone exchanged curious and uneasy glances. "I know some of you went into my office during that time," Richard said, scanning the room, "and I want to say I was very pleased with what I saw." Rebecca tried to keep her expression neutral, but she could feel her face growing warm. "The person who cleaned my office yesterday morning found the safe open and simply closed it, without touching anything, without even mentioning it. That's the kind of integrity I value in this company." Jennifer, the secretary, shot a venomous look in Rebecca's direction. She had suspected from the start that the boss was talking about the cleaning lady. "Because of that," Richard continued, "I've decided to give this employee a 20% raise, as well as include her in the company's health insurance plan." Rebecca's eyes widened. A 20% raise would mean nearly $200 more a month, and health insurance would solve Emily's medical tests right away. "Rebecca Johnson, please come up here," Richard said. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now back to the story." Rebecca stood on shaky legs. Every eye in the room was on her. Some employees clapped, while others simply watched in silence. Jennifer and Mike exchanged meaningful glances. "Thank you, Mr. Smith," Rebecca said as she reached the front. "I didn't expect—" "You deserve it," Richard interrupted. "Honesty is a rare quality these days." At that moment, the weight of the key in her pocket felt like a stone. She was being rewarded for the very honesty she was about to betray. The irony of the situation made her nauseous. After the meeting, as the employees dispersed, Richard asked Rebecca to stay behind. "Have a seat," he said, gesturing to a chair. "I'd like to talk to you." "Yes, sir." Rebecca, I know you've been struggling. HR informed me about your daughter's situation. Rebecca lowered her eyes, ashamed. I don't want anyone to think I'm asking for favors. You're not asking for anything, Richard said, but I grew up in a poor family. My mother worked as a cleaner her whole life to raise me. I know how hard it is. You don't have to... Listen, he interrupted. The health insurance you just got covers any tests your daughter needs. You can see Dr. Sarah, our company physician, as early as tomorrow. Rebecca felt her eyes fill with tears. It was the solution to all her problems, arriving exactly when she needed it most. I don't know how to thank you, sir. No need to thank me, just keep being the honest person you are. The word honest echoed in Rebecca's mind like a shout. She discreetly touched the pocket holding the key, feeling like the worst person in the world. Mr. Smith, she said, making a sudden decision, I found something on the floor of your office today. She pulled the golden key from her pocket and placed it on the desk. This key was on the floor near the safe. I think it must have fallen when you closed it. Richard picked up the key and examined it, surprised. This is the spare key, he said. I didn't even realize it had fallen. I thought I should return it as soon as possible. Richard looked at Rebecca with an expression she couldn't decipher. There was something like admiration in his eyes, but also astonishment. Rebecca, do you know what this key represents? I know it's important, sir. This key gives access to over $2 million in gold. You found it this morning and only just now returned it? Yes, sir. I thought about giving it to you right away, but I didn't want to interrupt your work. Richard leaned back in his chair, clearly impressed. You carried this key in your pocket all day, knowing your daughter was sick and needed money for tests. Rebecca nodded, unable to speak. And you still returned it? I'm not a thief, Mr. Smith, no matter how hard things are. Richard stood and walked to the window, turning his back to Rebecca. He stood there silently for several minutes. You know, Rebecca, he finally said, my mother always told me a person's true wealth isn't in what they have, but in what they do when no one is watching. Your mother was a wise woman. She was, he agreed, turning back. And today, you reminded me of her. Rebecca didn't know what to say. There was an intensity in Richard's voice that left her speechless. Go home and take care of your daughter, he said. And tomorrow see Dr. Sarah. Everything will be taken care of. Thank you, sir, truly. When Rebecca left the room, Richard stood alone holding the golden key. In 30 years of business, he had never met someone with such integrity. Most people he knew were honest, only when they lacked the opportunity to be dishonest. But Rebecca had had the perfect opportunity, a desperate need, and still chose to do what was right. That was rarer than gold. The next day, Rebecca took Emily to see Dr. Sarah. The doctor was a gray-haired woman with a kind smile who examined Emily carefully. It's a bacterial infection, but nothing that won't clear up with the right treatment, she said. I'll order some tests just to confirm, but I'm sure she'll be fine. Doctor, how much will the tests cost? Nothing, dear. It's all covered by the company's insurance. Rebecca felt such relief she nearly collapsed. After so many days of worry, there was finally light at the end of the tunnel. The tests were done that same morning, and the results confirmed the doctor's diagnosis. With the right treatment, Emily recovered completely within a week. During that time, Rebecca continued her work at the company with even more dedication. The raise meant she could now afford more nutritious food for Emily and even save a little for emergencies. But the peace didn't last long. On a Thursday morning, as Rebecca was cleaning the third-floor hallway, she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. I told you that woman couldn't be trusted, said a female voice she recognized as Jennifer's. Are you sure, Jennifer? Replied Richard. Absolutely. I got a call from Tricia Moore, who worked at Rebecca's previous cleaning company. She said several pieces of jewelry went missing when Rebecca worked there. Rebecca felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Tricia Moore was a woman who had always been jealous of Rebecca's work at the previous company. They had argued a few times over schedules and cleaning areas. According to Tricia, Jennifer continued, Rebecca was suspected of stealing small valuables from the offices. That's why she was fired from there. That doesn't make sense, Richard said. If she were a thief, she wouldn't have returned the safe key. It could have been a strategy to gain your trust. Think about it. She returns the key, gets a raise and health insurance, and now has unrestricted access to all the company's offices. Rebecca leaned against the hallway wall, her legs weakening. She knew she was being wronged, but she also knew how things worked. The word of a trusted secretary carried far more weight than that of a cleaner. "I think we should investigate," Jennifer said. "We can't take any risks." "You're right," Richard agreed, though he seemed reluctant. "I'll have the legal department contact her previous employer." Rebecca quickly stepped away from the hallway, trying to process what she'd just heard. Tricia Moore had lied about her, and now all the trust she'd built with Richard was hanging by a thread. For the rest of the day, she worked mechanically, mentally preparing for the worst. If she were fired, she'd lose not just her job, but also Emily's health insurance. And it would be nearly impossible to find another job with a theft accusation hanging over her. On Friday morning, Richard called her into his office for a talk. Rebecca entered with her heart in her throat. "Have a seat, Rebecca," he said with a seriousness she'd never seen before. "Yes, sir. I need to talk to you about some information that's come to my attention." Rebecca took a deep breath, bracing herself for the storm. "I've been told you may have been involved in some incidents at your previous company." "Mr. Smith, I can explain." "Let me finish," he interrupted. "Right now, these are just allegations. But given the seriousness of the situation, I'll need to suspend you temporarily while we investigate." Rebecca's world crumbled in that moment. "Sir, I swear on my daughter's life that I've never stolen anything from anyone, anywhere. The person you spoke to has a personal grudge against me." "I want to believe you, Rebecca, but I need to verify all the facts before making a final decision." "What about Emily's health insurance?" "It'll remain active during the investigation." It was a small relief, but Rebecca knew that if the investigation concluded she was guilty, she'd lose everything. "How long will I be suspended?" 2 weeks at most, enough time to look into everything. Rebecca stood with dignity even though she wanted to cry. "Mr. Smith, you'll find out I'm innocent. And when you do, I hope you remember who really accused me." For the next 2 weeks, Rebecca lived in hell. Without her paycheck, she had to dip into the small savings she'd managed to set aside for food. Emily sensed something was wrong, but Rebecca tried to keep things normal. "Mom, why aren't you going to work?" Emily asked one morning. "I'm on vacation, sweetheart." "But you seem sad. Isn't vacation supposed to be a happy time?" Rebecca hugged her daughter, trying to hide her tears. Meanwhile, at the company, Richard was personally overseeing the investigation. He contacted not only Rebecca's previous employer, but also some clients of that company where the alleged thefts had occurred. What he discovered left him furious. The cleaning company had fired 3 employees during the period Tricia Moore had mentioned. 2 for proven theft with cause, and 1, Rebecca, for workforce restructuring. There was no formal accusation against her. Even more, one client mentioned they had specifically praised Rebecca's work and regretted when she left the company. "That young woman was worth her weight in gold," said Mrs. Daisy, owner of one of the homes where Rebecca worked. "I've never seen a more honest and dedicated worker. One day she found a bracelet of mine that had been missing for months and returned it. She could have kept it, and no one would have known." When Richard dug deeper, he discovered Tricia Moore had been fired from the cleaning company 2 months after Rebecca, under suspicion of theft. There was also a history of her making false accusations against co-workers out of professional jealousy. On the 10th day of the investigation, Richard called Rebecca. "Rebecca, I need to speak with you. Can you come to the office?" "Yes, sir. I'm on my way." Rebecca arrived at the company with a mix of hope and apprehension. The past 2 weeks had been a roller coaster of anger and despair. "Have a seat," Richard said when she entered his office. "I have a few things to tell you." "Yes, sir." "First, I want to apologize. The investigation proved you're completely innocent." The relief was so overwhelming, Rebecca had to grip the chair to steady herself. "The person who accused you has a history of false allegations and was fired from her previous job for theft. I knew the truth would come out." "Second," Richard continued, "you're reinstated with full rights, and I'm doubling the raise you were supposed to get before. You deserve compensation for what you've been through." Mr. Smith, thank you so much. You don't know what this means to me. Actually, I do, he said, because I've been wronged in the past too. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, back to the story. Rebecca returned to work the following Monday, but noticed the atmosphere had changed. Some co-workers treated her differently, whispering when she walked by. Jennifer in particular seemed embarrassed and avoided speaking to her, but Rebecca refused to be discouraged. She kept doing her job with the same dedication as always, knowing her honesty had been proven. Then on a Thursday, 3 weeks after her return, something unexpected happened. Rebecca was cleaning Richard's office when she spotted some scattered documents on his desk. Normally, she wouldn't pay attention to paperwork, but one sheet caught her eye. It had a list of employee names. It was a list of planned layoffs. Her heart raced when she saw over 20 names, including people who had worked at the company for years. The document was signed by Bruce Wilson, the company's financial director. Rebecca knew she shouldn't read private documents, but her concern for her co-workers outweighed her hesitation. Many of those people had families, children, financial obligations. It wasn't fair for them to be let go without warning. She snapped a photo of the document with her old phone and finished cleaning, but her mind couldn't shake what she'd seen. That list meant the destruction of 20 families. During lunch, she looked for old Joe, a maintenance worker who had been with the company for 15 years and whose name was on the list. Old Joe, can I talk to you for a minute? Of course, Rebecca. What is it? Do you know anything about layoffs happening at the company? Old Joe looked at her in surprise. No. Why? Rebecca hesitated. If she showed him the document, she'd be admitting she had photographed private office papers. But if she did nothing, 20 families would be caught off guard. I just heard some rumors, she lied. Maybe it's best if you stay alert. You think I could be laid off? I'm not sure. But it's always good to be prepared for anything. Over the next few days, Rebecca felt uneasy. She knew she should do something, but she didn't know how to bring it up with Richard without revealing she'd photographed the document. The solution came when she overheard a conversation between Richard and Bruce Wilson in the hallway. Richard, we need to cut costs urgently, Bruce said. The mall construction is behind schedule and we're spending more than budgeted. I understand the situation, Bruce, but laying off 20 employees at once, that'll seriously impact operations. It's the only way to balance the books quickly. What about these people? Some have worked here for over a decade. Business is business, Richard, you know that. Rebecca realized Richard wasn't comfortable with the situation, but was being pressured by the CFO. She decided it was time to act. That afternoon, she asked to speak with Richard. Mr. Smith, sorry to bother you, but I need to talk to you about something important. Of course, Rebecca. What is it? It's about the planned layoffs. Richard was surprised. How do you know about that? I saw a document on your desk while cleaning. It wasn't on purpose, sir. But when I saw my co-workers' names, I got really worried. Rebecca, you shouldn't have read private documents. I know, sir, and I apologize. But these employees are good, hard-working people. Many have families to support. Richard sighed deeply. It's a tough decision, but a necessary one. The company is going through financial difficulties. Sir, may I make a suggestion? Go ahead. What if, instead of laying off 20 people, everyone agreed to a temporary pay cut? That way, no one loses their job and the company saves the same amount. Richard looked at her with interest. You think people would agree to that? If it's explained properly, and if it's temporary, I think so. It's better to earn a little less than nothing at all. That's an interesting idea, Richard admitted, but it'd have to be a significant cut, about 30% to achieve the necessary savings. 30% is a lot, Rebecca agreed. But what if the cut were progressive? Those who earn more take a bigger cut. Those who earn less take a smaller one. Rebecca's suggestion made Richard think it was a more humane alternative than simply firing people. Let me talk to Bruce about this possibility. Thank you, sir. I'm sure the employees will prefer this option. The next morning, Richard called a company-wide meeting to explain the financial situation and propose the alternative Rebecca had suggested. "Here's the situation," he said to the employees gathered in the auditorium. "We have two options. Either we lay off 20 people, or everyone agrees to a temporary pay cut for 6 months. A murmur spread through the room. "The cut would be progressive," Richard continued. "Those earning up to 2 minimum wages would take a 10% cut. Those earning up to 4 minimum wages, 20%. And those earning more than 4 minimum wages, 30%. Bruce Wilson, who was standing next to Richard, didn't seem entirely convinced by the proposal. "And after the 6 months," asked old Joe, "if the company recovers, salaries will return to normal, and we'll even give a bonus to make up for the sacrifice period." The employees talked among themselves for a few minutes. Rebecca watched everything from the back row, anxious for the outcome. "Those who agree with the proposal, raise your hands," said Richard. Nearly every hand went up. Only 2 or 3 people kept their arms crossed. "Then it's decided," said Richard, visibly relieved. "No one will be laid off, and we'll all do our part to overcome this difficulty together." After the meeting, Bruce Wilson went to Richard's office. "Are you sure about this decision?" he asked. "Layoffs would be more efficient financially." "Bruce, this company was built on the sweat of these people. I won't throw that away just for financial efficiency." "And if it doesn't work?" "It will. Motivated employees produce more than employees afraid of being fired." In the following months, Richard's strategy proved correct. The employees, knowing the company had fought to keep them, worked with even greater dedication. The mall project was completed on time, and new contracts started coming in. Rebecca, in turn, had earned even more of Richard's respect. He realized she wasn't just thinking of herself, but of the collective good. But 6 months later, something completely unexpected happened. On a Tuesday morning, while Rebecca was cleaning Richard's office, a well-dressed man arrived asking to speak with him. It was William Parker, a real estate businessman. "Richard, I need to talk to you about a delicate matter," said William as he entered the office. Rebecca was finishing dusting the furniture and getting ready to leave, but William stopped her. "Actually, you can stay. This involves you too." Rebecca froze, confused. "What do you mean?" asked Richard. "2 years ago, this young woman saved my father's life," said William, pointing at Rebecca. "Saved his life?" Richard asked, surprised. Rebecca's eyes widened. She vaguely remembered helping an elderly man who had collapsed on the street near her old home, but had no idea who he was. "My father, Harold Parker, had a heart attack on the street," William continued. "He was coming back from the bank when he collapsed on the sidewalk. This young woman didn't hesitate to help. She performed CPR until the ambulance arrived and stayed with him at the hospital until I got there." Rebecca remembered the incident. She'd learned first aid in a free community course and acted on instinct when she saw the man on the ground. "I just did what anyone would do," she said modestly. "No, you don't understand," William replied. "My father owns one of the largest construction firms in the country. When he recovered, he tried to find you to thank you, but you'd moved and we lost track." Richard listened with growing surprise. "For 2 years, my father wouldn't stop talking about the woman who saved his life. He even hired investigators to find you." "But how did you find me here?" Rebecca asked. "By chance. I was coming here to close a deal with Richard when I saw you in the hallway. I recognized you immediately." William took an envelope from his jacket. "My father asked me to give you this when we found you." Rebecca opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a letter. "Dear daughter," the letter began, "I don't even know your name, but I know you have a heart of gold. The doctor said if you hadn't acted so quickly, I wouldn't have survived. This money is little compared to what you did for me, but I hope it can help you and your family. May God always bless your life. With all my gratitude, Harold Parker." Rebecca began to cry, unable to control her emotions. "I can't accept this," she said, trying to return the envelope. "You can, and you will," William said firmly. "My father doesn't take no for an answer." He then turned to Richard and added, "Besides, I'd like to make a business proposal to you, but on one condition. This young lady must be involved." "How so?" Richard asked. "I want to form a partnership between our companies. but I want her promoted to quality supervisor. Someone with her character is exactly what we need to ensure our projects are executed with excellence." Richard looked at Rebecca, who was still in shock. "Rebecca, do you accept the promotion?" I don't know if I'm qualified for that," she stammered. "Technical skills can be taught," William said. "Character can't, and you have something far rarer, absolute integrity." In the months that followed, Rebecca's life changed completely. With Harold Parker's money, she was able to put a down payment on her own home and enroll Emily in a private school. The promotion meant a salary 5 times higher than her cleaning job, but she never forgot her roots. She used part of the money to create an assistance fund for company employees facing hardships, and she continued living in the same neighborhood, just in a better house. Richard was impressed by how Rebecca handled her change in circumstances. Many people would have become arrogant or changed their personality, but she remained the same humble, hard-working person she'd always been. "You know, Rebecca," he said one afternoon as they reviewed construction reports, "I set up that open safe test because I wanted to find someone I could trust completely." "And did you?" she asked, smiling. "I found much more than that. I found someone who taught me the true value of honesty. Actually, Mr. Richard, it was my mother who taught me that. She always said, 'Rebecca, you may be poor but never be dishonest. Poverty is temporary, but dishonesty marks the soul forever.' Your mother was a wise woman." She was, and I try to honor her lessons every day. A year later, during the company's end-of-year party, Richard gave a speech that moved everyone present. 2 years ago, I tested an employee. I left a safe full of gold open to see if she would be honest. What I didn't expect was that this test would teach me far more about honesty than I could ever teach her." He looked toward Rebecca, who was sitting with Emily at one of the tables. "Rebecca Johnson showed me that true wealth isn't what we keep in a safe, but what we hold in our hearts. And so, starting today, that safe will remain permanently open in my office, not filled with gold, but with photographs of every employee who makes this company a family." Applause filled the room, but Rebecca could barely hear it. She was thinking about her journey, from desperate cleaner to respected supervisor, from worried mother to fulfilled woman. "Mommy," Emily whispered in her ear, "are you crying?" "Tears of joy, my dear. So much joy." "Why are you happy?" "Because I've learned that when we do what's right, even when it's hard, life always finds a way to reward us." Emily, now 10 and much healthier thanks to the health insurance, smiled at her mother. "You always do what's right, Mommy." "I try, sweetheart. I always try." That night, when Rebecca got home, she found a surprise waiting for her. Harold Parker, the elderly man she had saved, was sitting in the living room. At 78, he was frail in appearance, but still had bright, lively eyes. "Mr. Harold," she exclaimed, surprised. "How did you get my address?" "My son gave it to me," he replied, smiling. "I hope you don't mind the visit." "Of course not. Please, come in." They sat in the small living room and Harold looked around approvingly. "You've put the money I gave you to good use." "Sir, I don't know how to thank you. You've changed our lives." "You changed mine first," he said. "You know, Rebecca, I spent my whole life accumulating wealth, building a business empire. But when I had that heart attack and woke up in the hospital, I started thinking about what really matters. You've built many important things. I built buildings, malls, condominiums, but the most important thing I found was someone like you." Harold took an envelope from his jacket. "That's why I want to make you an offer." Rebecca opened the envelope and found foundation documents. "I'm creating a foundation to help hardworking people going through tough times," Harold explained. "I want you to be the president." "President?" "Sir, I don't have the qualifications for that." "You have something better than qualifications. You have heart. And you know firsthand what it's like to need help." Rebecca read the documents carefully. The foundation would have $10 million to help working families with medical expenses, children's education, and housing. "Mr. Harold, this is incredible, but—" "No buts," he interrupted. "You gave me a second chance at life. Now I want you to help me give meaning to that second chance." 2 years later, the Harold Parker Foundation had already helped over 500 families. Rebecca, now with a business degree funded by the foundation, had become a reference in corporate social work. Richard also joined the foundation, directing part of his company's profits to social projects. The partnership between his company and Williams grew, and today they are responsible for some of the state's most significant low-cost housing developments. One Sunday morning, 5 years after the safe incident, Rebecca was in her office at the foundation when she received an unexpected visitor. It was Tricia Moore, the woman who had made false accusations against her. "Rebecca, I know you don't want to see me," Tricia said, visibly embarrassed, "but I need to talk to you." "Come in, Tricia. What do you want?" "I want to apologize and I need help." Tricia explained she had lost her job and was struggling to support her 2 young children. She had come to the foundation without knowing Rebecca was the president. "I know I don't deserve your help after what I did," she said, her eyes filled with tears. "But my children aren't to blame for my mistakes." Rebecca listened in silence, remembering the pain she had felt when falsely accused. "Tricia, you caused me a lot of suffering," she finally said. "But I've learned that holding on to bitterness only hurts the one who holds it. Will you help me? The foundation will help your children, not for you, but for them. But I have one condition. Anything. You'll work here as a volunteer for 6 months, unpaid. You'll learn what it means to help people instead of hurting them." Tricia agreed immediately. Over the next 6 months, she worked hard at the foundation, and Rebecca saw a gradual change in her. The social work had awakened an empathy in her that wasn't there before. "Rebecca," Tricia said on her last volunteer day, "thank you for giving me this chance. I've become a better person working here." Anyone can change, Tricia. They just have to want to. Today, 10 years after the safe incident, Rebecca is one of the most respected social entrepreneurs in the country. The Harold Parker Foundation has already helped over 5,000 families, and Rebecca was invited to speak at universities about business ethics. Emily, now 18, is studying medicine at a private university with a full scholarship earned through academic merit. She plans to specialize in cardiology, inspired by the story of how her mother saved Harold Parker's life. Richard remains a close friend and business partner. He never married, but always says Rebecca and Emily are like family to him. The safe in his office stays open, no longer filled with gold bars, but with photographs of all the families helped through the partnership between his company and the foundation. Harold Parker, now 88, still visits the foundation regularly. He enjoys talking to the people being helped and always ends the conversations by saying, "True wealth lies in giving, not receiving." One autumn afternoon, as Rebecca reviewed the foundation's annual reports, she remembered that distant morning when she found the safe open. Back then, she was a desperate cleaner, worried only about getting money for her daughter's medical tests. Now she understands that test wasn't just about honesty. It was about discovering that true wealth isn't in the gold we can take, but in the gold we leave in other people's lives. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Harold Parker Foundation, Rebecca speaking. "Rebecca, it's Mrs. Mary from the East Side Housing Project. My granddaughter needs urgent surgery, and we can't afford it." "Don't worry, Mrs. Mary, we'll help. Can you bring all the documents tomorrow morning?" "Yes, I can. Thank you so much, dear. God bless you." When she hung up, Rebecca smiled. With each passing day, she understood better the words her mother always repeated. "Honesty is like a seed. It may take time to grow, but when it does, it bears fruit for a lifetime." And the fruits of her honesty continued to nourish not only her family, but hundreds of others who found a second chance at life through the Harold Parker Foundation. That evening, when she got home, Rebecca found Emily studying for her medical school entrance exams. "How was your day, Mom?" "Another family helped," Rebecca replied, kissing her daughter's forehead. "And you? How's studying going?" "Good. Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you regret closing that safe 10 years ago? If you'd taken the gold, our lives would have changed much sooner." Rebecca thought for a moment before answering. "You know, Emily, if I'd taken that gold, Maybe our financial situation would have improved temporarily, but I would have lost something far more valuable. What? My dignity. And without dignity, no wealth is worth it. You're right, Mom. And look, by closing the safe, you ended up gaining so much more than if you'd stolen. That's true, but the most important thing isn't what I gained. It's what I can give to others. Emily smiled and went back to studying. Rebecca headed to the kitchen to make dinner, but paused by the window overlooking the city. Down below, millions of people battled their own temptations every day, facing tough choices between what's right and what's easy. She knew not everyone was as lucky as she had been, rewarded so generously for honesty. But she also knew that every person who chooses to do what's right, even when no one is watching, helps make the world a little better. Richard's safe remains open to this day, not because he blindly trusts every employee, but because he wants a daily reminder that a company's true security doesn't lie in locked safes, but in the quality of the people we choose to work with us. And when new employees ask about the open safe, he always tells Rebecca Johnson's story. The story of a janitor who had the chance to change her life by taking gold, but chose to change her life by being gold. The end. Now, what did you think of this touching story about Rebecca? Do you think she made the right choice by closing the safe and returning the key? Share your honest thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. If you know someone who's been through a similar situation, tell us about it. Thank you for joining us, and don't forget to leave a like. Most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.